And new details tonight about the missing World War II bomber who was built in San Diego and then lost at sea nearly 75 years ago. It was discovered near Papua New Guinea.
World War II may have ended long ago, but its secrets are still surfacing. Hidden bunkers, lost treasures, and long-forgotten wrecks lying untouched for decades.
They found sacks containing gold bullion, over 7,000 of them. They also found 98 million French francs.
Now, with time, technology, and a bit of luck, historians are uncovering discoveries that rewrite everything we thought we knew about the war. Join us as we dive into 20 most astonishing finds that continue to reshape the story of World War II. Number 20. Bell P-39 Cobra. In the remote wilderness of Russia's Murmansk region, something extraordinary surfaced in July of 2004. A fisherman noticed a strange shape breaking through the icy surface of Mart Yavor Lake. What he found wasn't debris. It was the tail of a long-lost World War II fighter plane, the Bell P-39 Cobra. On a frigid day in November of 1944, Soviet Lieutenant Ivan Baranovsky had been flying this very aircraft, one of the many sent to the Soviet Union by the United States through the Lend-Lease program. For reasons still unknown, he made an emergency landing on the frozen lake and vanished from history. Nearly 60 years later, the aircraft was pulled from the ice. Inside, astonishingly well preserved, were Baranovsky's remains and a maintenance logbook still resting in the cockpit. It was like opening a sealed chapter of the war, quiet, haunting, and deeply personal. After proper burial in Murmansk's Alley of Glory, Baranovsky was finally laid to rest with honor. His plane was then shipped across continents, first to a restoration expert named Jim Pierce in West Sussex, England, and later to the Niagara Aerospace Museum in Buffalo, New York. Number 19. The Bismarck under the Atlantic. 1,000 miles from land, beneath nearly 3 miles of freezing Atlantic water, rests a steel beast that once terrorized the seas. Its name still sends a chill down the spine. In May of 1941, the German battleship Bismarck set sail with one mission: to cripple Britain's supply lines. Armed with 8 massive 15-inch guns and wrapped in over 12 inches of armor, it was nearly unsinkable, and at first, it seemed unstoppable. In its first clash, Bismarck sank HMS Hood in less than 10 minutes, the pride of the Royal Navy, gone with over 1,400 men. Britain responded with fury. Over 40 ships and dozens of aircraft joined the hunt, turning the Atlantic into a battlefield. After a 3-day chase, British forces cornered Bismarck roughly 600 miles west of the French coast. Torpedoes slammed into its hull, guns fired relentlessly. But it wasn't enough. Bismarck's final blow came from within. To avoid capture, the crew scuttled their own ship. For nearly 5 decades, the wreck's location remained unknown. Then, in June of 1989, famed oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard, the same man who found the Titanic, discovered Bismarck lying upright on the seafloor, perfectly preserved in silence. Her massive hull was still intact, her guns still aimed, her secrets buried deep in steel and salt. She may have gone down fighting, but Bismarck didn't vanish. She waited quietly for the world to find her again. Number 18. Hidden Nazi Wall Stash. In July of 2021, severe flooding hit the city of Hagen in western Germany. Amid the chaos, a history teacher named Sebastian Yurtseven was helping his aunt clean her waterlogged house. As he peeled away soaked plasterboard from a wall in the basement, he stumbled upon something completely unexpected: a hidden cavity filled with sealed boxes. Inside was a perfectly preserved stash of Nazi artifacts, untouched since the final days of World War II. There were gas masks, a revolver, brass knuckles, Nazi party badges bearing eagles and swastikas, and a haunting portrait of Adolf Hitler. Even more disturbing was a stack of documents, including newspapers from 1945 and files believed to be tied to the Nazi welfare organization, the NSV, the National Socialist People's Welfare. At its peak, the NSV had over 17 million members and played a major role in distributing propaganda and managing seized assets from Jewish families and other persecuted groups. The house where the cash was found once served as a regional NSV headquarters. As Allied forces approached in April of 1945, its likely staff hurriedly hid the items in a narrow shaft between buildings, hoping never to be found. 76 years later, that buried secret came back to the surface, not in a museum, not in a history book, but behind a broken wall in a flooded basement. Number 17. Nazi uranium cubes. In the final years of World War II, deep beneath a church in the quiet German town of Haigerloch, Nazi scientists were working on something that could have changed the world, a nuclear reactor powered by hundreds of strange metallic blocks. These weren't just any blocks. They were uranium cubes, 5-centimeter chunks of solid uranium, each weighing about 5 pounds. Germany had over 600 of them. The plan was to suspend the cubes in heavy water, forming a lattice that could trigger a nuclear chain reaction. The man leading the effort? Werner Heisenberg. Yes, the same Heisenberg from quantum physics fame. But the Nazi nuclear program was scattered, underfunded, and riddled with mistrust. While the Allies raced ahead with the Manhattan Project, Germany's efforts were falling apart. And when American forces launched the Alsos mission in 1945, they raided the Haigerloch facility and confiscated the uranium cubes. Some of those cubes made their way to the United States. Many disappeared. One surfaced at the University of Maryland in 2013 with a handwritten note, taken from the reactor that Hitler tried to build. Another is at Harvard, and dozens more are still unaccounted for. Number 16. Kaittons mass graves. In the spring of 1940, deep in the Kaittons forest near Smolensk, over 21,000 Polish officers, police, and intellectuals were taken into the woods and executed, each with a single shot to the back of the head. The Soviet NKVD carried out the killings with chilling precision, targeting the very heart of Poland's leadership. Among the dead was Lieutenant Janina Lewandowska, a pilot and the only known woman executed in the massacre. The goal was brutal and clear: erase an entire generation of thinkers, leaders, and resistors. The bodies were buried in mass graves and sealed with silence. Then, in 1943, German forces uncovered the graves and broadcast the discovery. The Soviet Union immediately denied responsibility, blaming the Nazis, a lie that held for nearly 5 decades. It wasn't until 1990 that the truth came out. The Russian government finally admitted that the Soviet secret police were behind the atrocity. Number 15. U-864 and the toxic cargo. In the final months of World War II, Nazi Germany launched a secret mission called Operation Caesar. The goal was to deliver cutting-edge technology and materials to Japan, including advanced weapons and components for jet engines. At the heart of this mission was Yubot 864, a massive German submarine packed with nearly 67 tons of liquid mercury, stored in over 1,800 steel flasks. But British codebreakers had already intercepted the plan. The Royal Navy sent out HMS Venturer, a submarine commanded by 25-year-old Lieutenant Jimmy Launders. What followed was a tense underwater chess match off the coast of Norway. On February 9, 1945, Venturer made history by becoming the first and only submarine to sink another while both were submerged. U-Boat 864 and its toxic cargo went down with all 73 crew members aboard. For decades, the wreck remained untouched. Then, in 2003, it was rediscovered near the island of Fedje, sitting 150 meters below the surface. But there was a problem. The mercury had begun to leak. Slowly, silently, it was seeping into the ocean, threatening marine life and local fisheries. Salvaging the submarine was too risky. So Norway made a drastic decision. They would entomb the wreck in layers of sand and gravel, sealing the poison underground. Today, U-boat 864 lies buried beneath the sea. Its mission failed, but its danger still very real. Number 14. Panther tank in the basement. In the quiet German town of Heikendorf, near Kiel, police were conducting a routine investigation in July of 2015 when they stumbled upon something completely unexpected beneath a private villa, a fully preserved World War II Panther tank. Buried in the basement of an 84-year-old retired financial broker named Klaus-Dieter Flick was a military collector's dream, or nightmare, depending on who you asked. Alongside the tank, authorities also found a torpedo, a complete anti-aircraft gun, and crates of other military gear. The Panther alone weighed around 44 tons. Extracting it from the cellar wasn't easy. It took 20 Bundeswehr soldiers and nearly 9 hours of maneuvering heavy recovery equipment just to get it out. Flick had acquired the Panther in the 1970s and had reportedly driven it around during heavy snowfalls. He claimed all the weapons were demilitarized and legally owned, but prosecutors thought otherwise. In August of 2021, he was fined over 250,000 euros and given a suspended prison sentence under Germany's War Weapons Control Act. The Panther tank, originally introduced by Nazi Germany in 1943, was one of the most feared medium tanks of the war, praised for its firepower and armor, but plagued by mechanical issues. Finding one intact, in working condition, and hidden in a private cellar for decades shocked even the most seasoned historians. Today, the tank and the other seized weapons have been relocated to museums. Number 13. Secret POW radio transmitters. Behind the fences and watchtowers of World War II prisoner of war camps, some of the boldest acts of resistance didn't involve digging tunnels or escaping under cover of darkness. They involved wires, scrap metal, and a little bit of genius. Allied prisoners secretly built radio transmitters right under their captors' noses. In Stalag 17B, American Airman Sergeant James Cast managed to build a crystal radio using wire, a razor blade, and even a thimble. He hid it inside a carved-out soapbox. With it, prisoners tuned in to the BBC and learned about events like the D-Day landings, sometimes before the Germans even knew. Over in Stalag Luft 1, Royal Air Force warrant officer Leslie Hurrell and a fellow prisoner rigged a 2-valve radio using stolen parts and smuggled components. They wired it into the camp's lighting circuit and hid it behind a wooden panel. Every night, they'd quietly share BBC updates with the others, risking execution if caught. Years later, after the war, some of these devices were recovered from hidden compartments inside barracks or sent home by survivors. One was found inside a hollowed-out table leg. Number 12. Forgotten Japanese submarines. Near the end of World War II, Japan quietly launched something the Allies had never seen before, a submarine that could carry airplanes. These were the I-400 class subs, and they were unlike anything else built during the war. At over 400 feet long, each was bigger than a football field and held not just torpedoes, but 3 specially designed bombers hidden in a watertight hangar. These aircraft weren't for defense. They were built to take the war to distant shores, the Panama Canal, the American mainland, even New York. The plan was simple: surface, launch the planes, strike by surprise, and vanish beneath the waves before anyone could react. Only 3 of these super subs were ever completed: I-400, I-401, and I-402. But the war ended before they could fulfill their mission. The United States captured all 3 and brought them to Hawaii. Then, in 1946, worried the Soviets would demand access, the United States quietly sank them. Decades later, explorers found the wrecks deep off Hawaii's coast, rusted, broken, but still intact enough to tell their story. Number 11. Soviet tunnels under Berlin. In the 1950s, Berlin wasn't just a divided city, it was the front line of a silent war. Beneath its busy streets, the CIA and British SIS launched one of the boldest espionage operations of the Cold War, a secret tunnel straight into the heart of Soviet territory. Codenamed Operation Gold, the tunnel stretched 1,476 feet from West Berlin into the Soviet-controlled East. Built under the cover of a warehouse, it was designed to tap into Soviet military phone lines without detection. For nearly 11 months, Allied operatives recorded over 40,000 hours of calls and transcribed more than 443,000 conversations. The intel poured in everything the West had been desperate to hear, like troop movements, nuclear projects, and coded transmissions. But there was a twist. A British mole named George Blake had already told the KGB. The Soviets knew from day one. Still, they let the tunnel run, feeding false or incomplete data until they staged a dramatic discovery in April of 1956. Number 10. Spy pigeon in the chimney. In the quiet village of Bletchingley, Surrey, a man renovating his fireplace in the year 2012 made a discovery that linked his home directly to the heart of World War II espionage. Tucked deep inside the chimney were the skeletal remains of a pigeon. Still fastened to its leg was a small red canister, and inside, a tightly rolled message written on paper as thin as a cigarette. The pigeon was a World War II carrier bird, likely part of the National Pigeon Service, which deployed more than 250,000 pigeons during the war. These birds weren't just messengers, they were lifelines. When radios failed or silence was critical, pigeons flew through storms and bullets to deliver coded updates to Allied forces. The message found in the chimney was addressed to X02 and filled with a series of 27 five-letter code groups. It was signed by Sergeant W. Stott, believed to have worked with the British Special Operations Executive, a secret unit responsible for sabotage and espionage in Nazi-occupied Europe. Despite efforts by codebreakers at Bletchley Park and even modern experts at the government communications headquarters, the message remains uncracked. The cipher used has long been lost, and without the original codebooks, its contents may never be known. Number 9. The Bronze Eagle of the Graf Spee. In December of 1939, the German pocket battleship Admiral Graf Spee was cornered by British forces near the coast of Montevideo, Uruguay, after the fierce Battle of the River Plate. Rather than let his ship fall into enemy hands, Captain Hans Langsdorff sank the vessel just outside the harbor. For decades, the wreck sat silently beneath the waves, until one of its most imposing symbols was brought back to the surface. In the year 2006, divers recovered a massive bronze eagle from the wreckage. The sculpture weighed around 770 pounds, stood over 6 feet tall, and had a wingspan stretching more than 9 feet. It had once loomed over the ship's stern, clutching a swastika in its talons. Its recovery immediately sparked international debate. Some wanted it melted down and reshaped into a dove as a symbol of peace. Others demanded it be preserved as an artifact of historical significance. The Uruguayan government found itself caught in the middle of a political and ethical dilemma. How do you handle a relic so loaded with pain, propaganda, and history? To this day, the eagle remains in storage, while legal and moral arguments continue. Number 8. Nazi Bell. In the final, desperate years of World War II, deep in the mountains of Nazi-occupied Poland, scientists were working on something so secret it didn't even have a proper name, just a code word, Die Glocke. It means the bell, and what it was intended to do is still debated to this day. The device was shaped like a large bell, roughly 12 feet tall and 9 feet wide. Inside, 2 cylinders reportedly spun in opposite directions, filled with a glowing violet substance called Zerum-255. Witnesses claimed it gave off deadly radiation, and at least 5 scientists reportedly died during early experiments. But the real mystery is what it was supposed to do. Some say it was designed to generate anti-gravity. Others believe it was meant to distort time itself. It was allegedly tested near the Wenceslaus mine in Lower Silesia, beside a strange concrete structure now known as the Henge. The entire program may have been overseen by SS General Hans Kammler, the same man involved with the V-2 rocket, and when Germany collapsed, Die Glocke vanished. Some say it was smuggled to South America. Others believe it was captured during Operation Paperclip and hidden away by the Allies. No one knows for sure. But whether real or myth, Die Glocke has become a symbol of how far the Nazis were willing to go, not just to win the war, but to rewrite the laws of physics. Number 7. Yubot Rex of the Atlantic. Off the coast of North Carolina, deep beneath the surface, lie the remains of U-Boat 352, a German Type 7C submarine that once prowled the Atlantic like a silent predator. On May 9, 1942, it attempted to attack the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Icarus, but the Americans were ready. After dropping depth charges, Icarus forced the U-boat to surface. 17 German sailors died, and 33 were taken prisoner. Today, the wreck sits 110 feet below the surface, tilted sharply on its side, drawing divers from around the world. Just a few miles away, another wartime shadow sleeps. U-Boat 576 went down on July 15, 1942, after launching a torpedo attack on an Allied convoy. It sank near its final victim, the freighter SS Bluefields. Rediscovered in 2014, the wreck rests more than 720 feet deep, still largely intact, with its deck gun and conning tower clearly visible. Further north, off the coast of Nova Scotia, lies U-Boat 215. It was sunk on July 3, 1942, shortly after striking the Liberty ship Alexander Macomb. All 49 crew members went down with her. The wreck wasn't found until 2004. It rests at a depth of 270 feet and is now treated as a protected war grave. Number 6. Sunken silver. In February of 1941, the British cargo ship SS Gersopa was limping through the North Atlantic, alone and vulnerable. It had broken off from a convoy due to low fuel and rough seas. What no one knew was that deep in its hold lay a fortune, silver bullion bound for the United Kingdom's war chest. Then came U-Boat 101. A single torpedo split the Gersopa in half. The ship sank within 20 minutes, dragging down 84 crewmen and over 100 tons of silver. For decades, the wreck sat untouched, nearly 3 miles beneath the surface, just off the coast of Ireland. Fast forward to 2011. A deep-sea recovery team from Odyssey Marine Exploration located the wreck, resting 4,700 meters below. What followed was nothing short of historic. Over 2 years, they recovered nearly 110 tons of silver, more than 99% of the insured cargo. It remains the deepest and heaviest precious metal recovery in history. But it wasn't just silver they found. More than 700 letters were salvaged from the ship, personal messages frozen in time. Some were displayed in London's Postal Museum in a haunting exhibition titled Voices from the Deep. The Royal Mint later honored the Gersopa with commemorative coins struck from the recovered silver. What was once lost to the ocean for over 70 years is now a piece of history you can hold in your hand. Number 5. Hitler's last refuge, the Führer bunker. Deep beneath the streets of Berlin, hidden under 8 meters of reinforced concrete, lies the bunker where Adolf Hitler spent his final days. Known as the Führer bunker, it was built in 2 stages between 1936 and 1944. The shelter was buried beneath the garden of the old Reich Chancellery, with walls nearly 4 meters thick, designed to survive the worst Allied bombings. On January 16, 1945, Hitler descended into the bunker for good. Over the next 105 days, as the Third Reich crumbled above him, he issued desperate orders, watched his empire unravel, and eventually married Eva Braun in a brief, doomed ceremony. Just 2 days later, on April 30th, they both took their own lives. Their bodies were burned in the garden above, just as Hitler had instructed. After the war, Soviet forces made multiple attempts to destroy the bunker to prevent it from becoming a place of pilgrimage. Large portions were demolished in the late 1940s, and more destruction followed in the 1980s when new buildings were constructed above it. But not everything vanished. In 1999, construction workers unearthed parts of the original structure, revealing staircases, sections of wall, and even charred remnants of wood and wiring. Though the site was reburied, its rediscovery reignited global interest. Today, the location is marked only by a small sign installed in 2006. There's no museum, no fanfare, just a quiet patch of land hiding a chilling story beneath its surface. Number 4. Enigma machine in the Baltic Sea. In November of 2020, a group of divers working with the Worldwide Fund for Nature were clearing old fishing nets from the seabed in Gelting Bay, off the coast of northern Germany. What they found was not marine debris, but a chilling artifact from World War II, a rusted machine, tangled in the net, that looked like an old typewriter. But this wasn't just any machine. It was a 3-rotor Enigma cipher device, one of the most feared tools of Nazi military communication. Used by the German Navy, the Enigma machine encrypted messages so complex they were once thought to be unbreakable. Its system of rotors and plug boards could produce billions of possible settings. But in 1941, British codebreakers at Bletchley Park, led by Alan Turing, cracked the Enigma's code, changing the course of the war. This particular machine had likely been tossed overboard by retreating Nazi forces in the final days of the conflict. Naval historians noted it was probably not from a U-boat, since submarines typically used a 4-rotor variant. Instead, it may have come from a surface vessel, discarded to prevent its capture. After spending more than 75 years underwater, the machine was carefully handed over to archaeologists in Schleswig-Holstein. Restoration took nearly a year, and despite corrosion, many of its internal components survived. This Enigma machine is now preserved in a German museum. Number 3. Hidden art. They didn't carry rifles or wear uniforms, but a group of Austrian salt miners may have rescued the very soul of Europe's cultural history. Deep inside the Altusee salt mine, nestled in the Austrian Alps, the Nazis had stashed a jaw-dropping collection of stolen masterpieces, over 6,500 paintings, 137 sculptures, and crates packed with priceless artifacts. Among them were works by Michelangelo, Vermeer, and Jan van Eyck. Hitler had plans to display it all in a grand museum in Linz, the so-called Führer Museum, a personal obsession. But as Nazi defeat became inevitable, panic set in. In April of 1945, August Eigruber, the Nazi leader of Upper Danube, gave the order: destroy everything. 8 bombs, each weighing 500 kilograms, were placed inside the mine. That's when the miners took a stand. They had worked those tunnels their whole lives, and they weren't about to let centuries of culture be erased. Quietly, without command or fanfare, they defused the bombs, sealed the mine, and waited. On May 8th, American forces arrived. The monument's men began their recovery mission almost immediately, and to their amazement, the artwork was intact. The salt and cold had preserved it beautifully. Number 2. Ireland's neutrality signs. During World War II, pilots flying over the Atlantic often relied on crude maps and the hope of clear skies. But as they approached the western edge of Europe, something strange would sometimes appear below: massive white letters carved into Ireland's coastal cliffs, spelling one word: air. These markings weren't ancient, and they weren't decorative. Starting in 1942, Ireland built over 80 such signs at key coastal lookout points. Each one was created using stones painted white, stretching up to 10 feet tall and often accompanied by a numbered code identifying the nearest watch station. Their purpose was both simple and deeply strategic, to make it absolutely clear from the air that the land below was Irish territory and strictly neutral. Ireland had declared neutrality on September 2nd, 1939. But neutrality didn't mean silence. The air signs told German pilots to steer clear and gave Allied crews vital help with navigation. In a time before GPS, even a single word etched into the earth could mean the difference between crashing into cliffs or making it home. But the signs were just the surface. Ireland also allowed British aircraft to use a secret air corridor over County Donegal and provided weather data that proved crucial to the timing of the D-Day invasion. Today, a few of these signs remain, weathered, overgrown, but still visible from above. They're not just relics. They're quiet proof that even a neutral nation can leave a mark on the most global war in history. Number 1. The lost convoys of the Arctic route. The Arctic route was more than just a supply line. It was a frozen lifeline in the middle of World War II. Winding through ice-choked waters, it carried tanks, fuel, and ammunition from Allied ports all the way to the Soviet Union. But every shipment came with a brutal cost. German U-boats and Luftwaffe bombers turned that route into a deadly gauntlet, sinking dozens of ships and dragging thousands of sailors to the ocean floor. For a long time, the story of the Arctic convoys lived only in survivor accounts and cold statistics. Then, modern search teams from Russia and Norway began exploring the wreck sites using sonar and deep-sea submersibles. What they found was haunting. Whole ships lying intact under the ice-cold water, crates of ammunition still stacked in the holds, uniforms, helmets, and boots exactly where they'd been left. In some wrecks, even the skeletal remains of sailors were frozen in time. These aren't just wrecks, they're memorials. They show just how dangerous and essential that route was. It wasn't flashy or well-known, but it helped fuel the Red Army's push to Berlin. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.